Its general intent is to prevent gun violence, mass shootings. I don't think that that's a goal that anybody in this room doesn't share.
We cannot afford to keep waiting for the next deadly mass shooting to happen and maybe happen here.
New at 7 this morning, lawmakers are hearing from neighbors in Washington state over Governor Jay Inslee's proposal to ban semi-automatic guns. The plan would ban the sale and manufacture of semi-automatic guns with at least one military-style feature. For example, an AR-15 would be banned under this bill. Now, neighbors advocating for the ban spoke out during yesterday's legislative session. They say the impact of gun violence affects more than just those who are physically hurt or killed. One woman said gun violence took her grandparents, an uncle, and her mother.
Trauma loss is like dropping a stone in the water. The ripples that extend outward can drown the survivors.
Meanwhile, those against the ban say the bill wouldn't just ban weapons, it would also cost people their jobs.
This bill prohibits manufacturing and will result in a direct layoff and plant closure of our facility in Lakewood, Washington. While I am speaking against this bill, more importantly, I am speaking up and standing up for our 624 employees.
Just last week, Washington State's Sheriff Association issued a letter criticizing Governor Inslee's ban, saying in part, quote, the new proposals to restrict gun ownership would further infringe on rights that have been clearly and repeatedly established. The rise in violent crime that so concerns citizens has happened even as regulations and restrictions on firearm ownership have grown.
Also discussed a bill that would give local governments the power to pass their own gun control laws. The bill would allow cities and counties to pass their own laws in addition to state law, allowing for more restrictive gun control in parts of the state.
One size fits all doesn't necessarily work. And local jurisdictions should have the authority to adopt the kind of gun regulations that are appropriate for their community. I believe that if you take the responsibility of having a firearm, then you should take also the additional responsibility of understanding the local laws. Although there may be some inconvenience by not being able to carry your firearm or in the same manner in every jurisdiction, I think the need for local jurisdictions to adopt firearm laws that are applicable to the circumstances they're facing outweighs that concern.
Those against the bill say it would create a patchwork of laws and regulations. It could result in 14 different laws in the stretch of 100 miles.